Good evening and good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Tim Jones, and welcome to another edition of Across the World with my good friend Hamad Hassan, coming to you from Lahore, Pakistan, and I am coming to you, as always, from Seattle, Washington, in the United States. And today we're going to talk about a topic that affects every culture in the world, and that's the topic of divorce. It's unfortunate when it happens. It's often the cause of a lot of sadness, but it is a fact of life that in every culture, sometimes when people get married, things just don't work out for whatever reason. And I thought it would be interesting to explore this topic from a cultural perspective and see how this issue plays out and surfaces in our country, in the United States, and in Pakistan. Hamad, what do you think? You want to talk about the challenge of divorce?
Good morning, Tim. Yeah, I think so. It is a very important topic. People should talk about that because it is one of the social problems in our societies, and it also results in mental stress, into the depression due to the situation.
I think that's great. So let me ask you a question. In Pakistan, and I'll answer the same question in the United States, but in Pakistan, is the rate of divorce increasing in recent years compared to, let's say, 50 years ago?
Yeah, in Pakistan, as compared to 50 years back, there are a lot of cases, hundreds of thousands of cases daily, which are filed to the court of the divorces by men or divorces by women. So now it is happening daily, and a lot of news channels now covered the reports, and I think so it is increasing here in Pakistan, and numbers are very much too alarming.
Yeah, I would say they have increased, certainly compared to 50 years ago, definitely. It is easier to get a divorce, for one thing. But one of the reasons that women did not get divorced so much, let's say 50 years ago, is back in, let's say, the 1950s, the 1960s, wives were often financially dependent on the income of their husband. So they could not get out of a bad marriage because they didn't have a source of income. Nowadays, far more women work, far more women have some degree of financial security. And I think that has made them more willing to end a bad marriage than maybe, as I say, 50, 60, 70 years ago. But still, the problem of divorce is very high. I would say that roughly half of marriages in the United States end in divorce, which is a very, very high number. What would you say is the typical age that most men get married in Pakistan? Same question for women. What's the typical age for when women get married, at least for the first time in your culture?
I think so. It depends upon community to community. In some of the communities, there's a trend in which they marry their children, because you know that marriage in Pakistan here is mostly handled by the parents of the child. So there are a lot of cases in which underage children are also married here in Pakistan, which are 16 or 17, 18. In Pakistan, 18 age is legal to get married. So I think so. In most of the cases, men get married from 30 plus, I think so, and the women about almost 25.
Okay. I would say in our country, the average age of marriage is getting older. I think people are waiting longer than they did in the past. I think more and more people are wanting to get their career kind of started before they get married, before they start a family. So I would say the average age is probably more like in the late 20s for men and women to get married. It is not uncommon for a woman to get married when she's 23, 24. But I would say generally, compared to 50 years ago, people are waiting longer to get married. They're waiting longer to start a family. I'm sort of an extreme. I got married when I was 32. So that's considered a little bit on the old side, but I became a father at age 40. That is considered rather on the old side for the United States. But I think a lot of the age of marriage is more and more driven by when both the husband and the wife, when they feel that they're ready to start a future together and they want to kind of get their own careers started. Of course, in the United States, we don't have the parental influence on the selection of a marriage partner. It's mostly love marriages, so people decide who they want to marry without the influence or interference of their parents. So that probably also is another reason why I'm going to guess that marriages maybe start a little bit later in the United States. What would you say are the social impacts of divorce in Pakistan? How is it impacting? What is the cost, if you will, of divorce in your society?
Yeah. What I think that, as you know, that in Pakistan, the family system is too much strong here in Pakistan. So when the man and woman uh, when they call with each other and they go to the file a divorce, it impacts the whole all the people, the group of relatives which are living around them. So it is a lot of impact in the social culture of Pakistan. And back in 2020, our Prime Minister Imran Khan gave a somehow controversial statement. You can say it was welcomed by the religious societies, and it was very much criticized by the liberal societies. And but he passed the comment that the Bollywood culture in Pakistan, which is coming from India due to the increase in the Bollywood movies and dramas. The culture from India is coming to Pakistan, and that's why he thinks that the divorces are now at the high. So it was a comment given by our Prime Minister. So overall, the divorce has not positive impact on the societies because the societies are very connected with each other, and if someone in between them indulge himself or herself into a controversy, it influences whole community or society.
Interesting. Yeah, in our country, we don't have the extent of extended families all living near each other. It's very common. My wife and I live in Seattle. Her family was from Toronto, Canada. My family was from Ohio. That's a state way far east. It's very common for families, for husbands and wives when they marry, to possibly live nowhere near the rest of their families. They absolutely might, but they also may live far away. And so the real impact because of divorces is really the impact it has on the children more than anything else. Sometimes courts will say that the husband can have custody sometimes, and the wife can have custody other times, and so the children may go back and forth. Sometimes the court may say no, the kids are going to stay just with the mother full time, and the father can have some visitation rights. But that's really the biggest impact. Really, is on the children. It's very hard, and I'm sure that's a global statement. It's going to be hard on the children in Pakistan, in the U.S., in any country. What would you say are some of the main reasons people request a divorce in your culture? I'm going to guess we're going to have a lot of common reasons in both of our countries, but what are the most common reasons that people ask for a divorce in your culture? And I'm also curious, is it equally distributed, men wanting to get divorced versus women wanting to get divorced? I mean, is it more common that one gender is asking for divorce more than the other? I'm curious about that too.
Okay, but I think that the domestic violence is one of our social problems here in Pakistan. So a lot of cases are there in which, due to the domestic violence, the woman which faces domestic violence, he files a case against her husband, and there are also, that the culture in Pakistan, in which there is a culture that the mother-in-law wants to to control the house affairs. So there is always a political war between a girl and a mother-in-law. So it also happens here in Pakistan commonly. If we talk about the number of which gender has filed more number of divorces, I think so. Here in Pakistan, men because man is in control, and it is more easier for a husband to file a case of divorce against a woman, because a lot of women in Pakistan are house women. They are working.
Yes.
They have no mean of resources if they are divorced. So a lot of cases are there that after the divorce, a woman have no life. They are admitted to some social
Yeah.
institutions
Yeah.
where they spend their whole life.
Yeah. Interesting. I would say the main reasons for the people to get divorced in the United States are probably very similar. Domestic violence is absolutely, if that is present in a marriage, that's a very common reason for people to request divorce. Usually, of course, the woman is initiating in that case. Infidelity. One of the people having an affair, that's obviously very common. That's pretty universal. I would also say financial insecurity is another reason. Sometimes one of the most common things couples fight about in the United States is their financial affairs. How much money are they earning? How much money are they saving? How much money are they spending? So issues around money and finance are a common cause for tension in a marriage in our country, and oftentimes can lead to divorce. But really, I think a lot of this comes down to ineffective communication. I think couples who know how to communicate, when things are not working, communicate what their needs are, show appreciation for each other and the things that each other is doing, those are marriages that are more likely to last. I think one of the challenges, a lot of people get married too young and they don't know about how to effectively communicate. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're not on the same page about whether they want children or how many children they want to have. I've often told my two daughters, who are ages 28 and 27, make sure when you find someone that you might want to marry, make sure you and they are on the same page about, do you want children? And if so, how many? Because if one person wants to have 5 children and the other person doesn't want to have any, that's going to be a problem at some point. So I'm curious, do courts in Pakistan tend to favor the husband or the wife, or do the courts tend to treat them equally when they are filing for divorce?
I think so. They the decision of the court is on the legal basis. It is a right of every man, and it is a right of every woman to file a divorce against his husband or woman. So it is a legal right to every citizen here in Pakistan. So if someone presents the strong evidence or strong logic that why is he quitting, why is he giving divorce, filing divorce, good justification, then the court decides on her or him, him or her side.
Okay. I would say in the United States, if there's children involved, the courts tend to favor the mother more than the father. Not always, but generally speaking, if there are young children at home, the courts will tend to give custody to the mother, or more custody to the mother than to the father. They will look at their incomes and their career options, but it is more common that the husband is going to be paying what we call child support to the mother than there is that the mother is going to pay child support to the father. So courts in our country generally still favor the needs of the women. And I believe that's partly because men generally have more sources of income, they have more power. And so the courts are looking out for the needs of women. I would say as more and more women are getting closer to earning as much income as men, these differences are starting to fade away. But there is definitely a bias to some extent towards the mother of the child. Now, if there are no children involved, then that's a different matter. Now, I have a question. Is there a stigma in your society against either men or women who have been divorced? And I'm not talking about religion. I'm going to get to religion in a moment, but I'm just talking about in general in society. If a person has been divorced, are they somehow viewed negatively, or are they somehow, is it disapproved? Is this person viewed as somehow being less honorable?
In general, in the case of men, uh, if he has divorced a woman, society, for society, it is a normal act of man. But in the case of women, the woman has to face a lot of hurdles in the society, a lot of criticism in the society, because society always blames the woman, that she was a cause of controversies, and she was a cause of divorce. So for women, it is very hard life after the divorce here in Pakistan. I don't know about United States, but in Pakistan, because in Pakistan, most of the women are not financially independent. So if they are divorced, number one, they get financial instability, and secondly, nobody here in Pakistan is also a trend that the man do not likes to marry a woman who is already divorced. So it's a very hard life for a woman, and it is a negative aspect, I think so.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how I would answer this question in the United States. I would say that for the most part, since half the people in our country end up getting divorced, there's not that much stigma attached to being divorced. My wife previous to our current marriage, and we've been married for 35 years. Yay. But I don't think there's that much of a stigma. If somebody was married 4 or 5 times, maybe, yeah, maybe there might be something like, what's wrong with you that you can't make a marriage work? But generally in our society, I think nowadays it's very different from what it would have been 50 to 100 years ago, where there was definitely a sense of disapproval, society disapproval on people who got divorced. But it's just so common nowadays that I don't think there is that kind of stigma. Really, it comes down to, why did someone get divorced? Were you cheating on your spouse? Well, then there might be some stigma against you because you were caught cheating. Were you cruel to your spouse? Were you a husband who committed, acts of domestic violence? Well, then definitely there would be a stigma against you. But just 2 people not being able to make it work and deciding to separate their lives, I would not say there's a great stigma attached to that. The part that I'm curious about comparing in our cultures is the consequences of divorce from the religious perspective. I am curious what the viewpoint is in Islam about divorce. If people get divorced, if 2 Muslims get divorced in your country, how are they treated from the perspective of the religion?
Yes, firstly, the religion advises all Muslims that you should not go for the divorce. You should find some solutions to the problems, and and the divorce should be the last thing which you should decide. And secondly, the divorce procedure in Pakistan is followed as per Islamic laws. First, if somebody files a divorce and the court accepts it, then there is a 3-month time which the court gives to the both men and women, that during those 3 months, if you both are agreed to reunite again, then you can settle down your problems and you can again unite. And if 3 months no progress in that, then automatically after 3 months another divorce file will be filed, and again 3 months are given. After that second filing, again 3 months are given, that if you both wants to settle down your problems, then you can reunite again. And if after those 3 months are also just spent like that, then automatically the divorce procedure is completed, and the man is bound according to Islamic laws to give, because when marriage agreement takes place, there is a hakke meher, we say, amount of money or amount of property which is allotted to the woman by the man. So after the divorce, you have to, if you have not given that amount or that property during your life, you have to hand over that property or amount to the woman after the divorce.
Okay.
These all are according to Islamic laws here in Pakistan.
Okay. So in our country, religion isn't, it's important in our country, but not as, I don't think is as dominant an aspect of people's lives as it might be in your country, I don't believe. But I would say that it's frowned upon by most religions, but it's understood that people sometimes get divorced. Sometimes it doesn't work out for whatever reasons. So I would say, and again, I'm not a super religious person, so I may not be representing the views of someone who has a deep faith in Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but I believe in general the religions, they may look disfavorably on someone who gets divorced, but it's not like they're going to be excommunicated from their church the way maybe it might have been in, maybe 100 years ago or something like that. I think I'd like to wrap up by asking, what thoughts do you have about how people can stay successfly married? Now, I'm a longtime married person, so I have some thoughts on that. I understand that you're a young single man. You've not been married before, but just still, you're a smart person. What do you think are some things that could help people stay married longer and more successfully, so that marriages don't have to end in divorce?
What I think that compromise is only the solution. If you had a marriage agreement, then it means that you have to compromise the other's negative aspect. You have to compromise that. If you want want a long relationship, because every man in this world has some negative things. Every man. So it is a natural thing which is connected to every human being. So we should compromise each other's faults, and we should be open to accept their mistakes, and we should appreciate them when they are doing good, because in the most of the cases when when they are doing good, nobody appreciates, neither a man nor a woman. But when he commit a mistakes, then they say, yeah, you did it. So I think so appreciation and compromise is very much important if you want a long relationship. It can be between a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It can be between parents. It can be between. It's a universal rule.
Yeah,
yes.
I agree. I would add to that. I think talking about what you're looking for in a marriage before you get married is important. Talking about whether you want to have kids, what your parenting beliefs are on how to properly raise kids, what the roles of men and women are in a marriage. What are your expectations of your spouse? I know some people where they when they're dating, they're very much in love, and the man does all sorts of wonderful things and buys flowers and all these things, and then they get married and he expects the wife to, where's my dinner? I want my dinner now. And all of a sudden they've changed, and they never talked about what the roles were going to be. I think another thing that could really help is just getting married later and having the courtship last longer. I can't say this with scientific proof, but it is my belief that marriages that start when someone is very young, like 21 or 22 or 23, are less likely to last than a marriage where the people are a little bit older. They know a little bit more about who they are as a person, what they're looking for in life. Now, my wife was married once before, and she was married at like age 21, very, very young. And the marriage, they ended amicably. They ended it friendly, but they kind of drifted apart. They realized they got married too young. I got married relatively late in life. And so I was pretty sure about what I wanted for my career. I was pretty sure what I was looking for in a wife. And we dated for 2 years before we got married. We were engaged for about a year before we got married. So we did not hurry into it. So we knew each other better. And I agree completely with you. The importance of compromise and communication. I think it's one of the things that as people spend a lot of time together, they sometimes get lazy and they don't compromise as much. They don't talk. They don't listen. They don't ask questions. They don't check in to find out how do you feel I'm doing? How can I help you? And calmly talk about their differences. I think the marriages that have good communication and mutual respect for each other, those are the marriages that in the end are going to last and be rich. The marriages where they don't talk, they don't compromise, these are the marriages that I think are going to struggle. And my parents were horrible communicators. That marriage did not work out. And I knew at a young age that there was a high likelihood that my parents' marriage would probably end in divorce, because it was a very toxic mix. They were very unhappy with each other. And I learned from that. And I tried to learn how to be a good husband by seeing how an ineffective marriage could work. And I'm very happy. My wife and I like to tell people we've been married for 35 years, 9 of the happiest years of my wife's life. That's a joke. That's a joke. That implies she was not happy for the other years, but she is. We're very proud parents of 2 adult children who are age 28 and 27 that we adopted from China many years ago, and we're very, very happy. And you know, to have a successful marriage, both people have to work at it. If one person's working at it and the other person's not, that's going to show up at some point. That's 2 of the most important phrases in a successful marriage, in my opinion. And in fact, an effective life are knowing how to sincerely say thank you and knowing how to sincerely say I'm sorry, to really show respect and appreciation for the other person.
I think
That
that's a very
goes a
important
long
message for
way.
our viewers.
Yeah.
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 So that's it for the session.
All right. Well, thank you, Hamad. And thank everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all on another future session of Across the World. Bye for now.